Move! Move! Danielle screamed as she shoved through the crowd, her shopping bag hitting the pavement. A young man lay motionless in the middle of the intersection, his chest barely moving, if it was moving at all. People stood frozen, phones out, whispering. "The car hit him!" someone yelled. "He's not breathing!" Danielle dropped to her knees without thinking. She pressed her palms to his chest and started CPR, hard, fast, desperate. 1, 2, 3. Then a sharp pain ripped through her stomach. Danielle gasped, her whole body tightening, and right there on the hot pavement, in front of everyone, her water broke. A woman shrieked, "She's having a baby!" Danielle's hands never stopped. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "God, please, don't let him die, not like this." Moment earlier, Danielle Pierce had learned how to smile without meaning it. Her shift at Mercy Oaks Medical Center was supposed to run late, but the charge nurse pulled her aside around mid-afternoon and told her she could clock out early. Someone had swapped schedules, and the floor was finally covered. Danielle nodded, grateful, but the relief didn't reach her eyes. She peeled off her gloves, washed her hands, and stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror for a second too long. 7 months pregnant, widowed, tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. Terrence's face flashed through her mind like it always did when the hospital got quiet. His laugh, his voice calling her Dani, the way he promised he'd be right there when their baby arrived. Danielle swallowed hard and pressed her palm against her belly. "Lord," she whispered, "please help me finish this." Outside, the afternoon sun made Charlotte look normal, like the world hadn't changed. Danielle climbed into her car and sat for a moment before turning the key, letting the air conditioner blow over her face. She told herself she'd go straight home, eat something, and put her feet up. But on the drive, she remembered she still hadn't bought the last few things she needed for the baby. Diapers, wipes, that gentle baby wash the nurses always recommended. So she pulled into a small shopping strip near the intersection of 2 busy roads, the kind with a pharmacy, a discount store, and a little beauty supply on the end. She moved slowly, one hand on her back, the other holding her purse strap. The little kicks in her stomach were a reminder that she couldn't fall apart right now, not with a life depending on her. Danielle had just stepped out of the discount store with a small bag of baby items when she heard a sharp scream. "Somebody help me! My bag!" Danielle turned and saw an elderly man near the sidewalk, well-dressed, standing tall even in shock, reaching out helplessly as 2 young men snatched his handbag and sprinted away. The thieves moved fast, weaving between people like they'd practiced it. Some shoppers gasped, some froze. A few stepped back like danger was contagious. Then a man's voice cut through the noise. "Hey, stop!" A young black man took off running after the thieves. Danielle noticed him immediately because he didn't hesitate, not even for a second. He was tall and lean, wearing worn sneakers and a plain hoodie, moving with the urgency of someone who couldn't stand to watch wrong happen in front of him. His name was Jalen Brooks, and in that moment he looked like a man who believed doing the right thing was worth the risk. "Sir, don't," someone shouted, but Jalen was already gone. The thieves darted toward the intersection. Jalen closed the distance, his eyes locked on the bag. He stretched his arm out. And that's when it happened. A car turned too quickly into the lane. Tires screeched. A dull impact cracked through the air. Jalen flew sideways and hit the pavement hard, rolling once before going still. Time froze for half a breath, then panic exploded. "Oh my God! Call 911! Is he dead?" Danielle's nurse instincts took over before fear could. She dropped her shopping bag and hurried toward him, ignoring the pounding in her chest. When she reached Jalen, she knelt down, careful but fast, and checked his responsiveness. "Sir, can you hear me?" No answer. She tilted his head, checked his breathing, nothing she could trust. Danielle didn't think. She acted. She placed her hands on his chest and started compressions, steady and hard, counting under her breath the way she'd done 100 times before. 1, 2, 3. Her arms burned. Her knees ached. Around her, voices swirled like a storm. Then Danielle felt a tight, deep cramp wrap around her belly. She gasped, but didn't stop. Another wave hit, stronger. Her breath shook, and then she felt warmth. Danielle's eyes widened. Her water had broken. A woman nearby stared. "Ma'am, your pants!" Danielle clenched her jaw, tears springing to her eyes from pain and pressure. "Somebody, please, call an ambulance," she said, her voice strained. "And don't just stand there." She kept pressing down on Jalen's chest, refusing to let the moment swallow her. Her contractions rolled in like thunder, but she fought through them with the kind of strength grief had forced her to learn. "God, please," she whispered. "Not today. Not like this." In the distance, sirens finally screamed closer. A paramedic truck pulled into the lot, lights flashing across the faces of the crowd. Danielle didn't stop compressions until a paramedic touched her shoulder. "Ma'am, we got him." Only then did she lean back, shaking, breathless, pain flooding her body all at once. As they lifted Jalen onto the stretcher, Danielle's legs trembled beneath her. Another contraction hit, and she cried out, this time not from fear for a stranger, but because her own baby was coming. Right here, right now, and the afternoon that started like any other had just become the day everything changed. The sirens didn't stop screaming until the ambulance doors slammed shut. Danielle lay on the stretcher with her hands gripping the sides, her body shaking from pain and adrenaline. One paramedic stayed near her head, speaking calmly, while another worked over the unconscious man on the neighboring stretcher. "Ma'am, focus on me," the paramedic said. "What's your name?" "Danielle." "Pierce," she breathed, fighting another contraction. "My baby." "We know, you're doing good. Stay with us." Across from her, the young man's chest rose under the pressure of medical hands. His skin looked ashen, his face slack. The sight pierced Danielle's heart because she'd seen too much death in her job already, too much loss that didn't ask permission. She turned her face toward the ceiling and whispered a prayer through clenched teeth. "Lord, don't let today end in tragedy. Please." The hospital lights swallowed them as they rolled into Mercy Oaks, and everything became a blur of nurses, calls for supplies, and fast footsteps. Danielle recognized the emergency wing even through the haze, recognized that sharp smell of antiseptic and urgency. Someone placed an oxygen mask over her nose. Someone asked her how far along she was. Someone called out, "Labor and delivery, now!" Danielle wanted to explain that she worked here, that she wasn't just another patient, but her body didn't care about titles or uniforms. Her body only cared about survival. They rushed her into a delivery room, and within minutes, Danielle was surrounded by a team that moved with practiced precision. A doctor leaned over her, voice firm but kind. "Danielle, I'm Dr. Patel," she said. "You're in active labor. We need you to breathe with us, okay?" Danielle nodded, tears slipping down the sides of her face. She couldn't stop thinking about Terence, how he should have been right there holding her hand, telling her she was strong. Instead, all she had was memory and faith. "Terence," she whispered to the air, "I'm doing it. I'm trying." Hours felt like minutes, and minutes felt like hours. The pain was a wave that never fully receded. Danielle screamed once, then apologized, then screamed again because her body demanded it. A nurse wiped her forehead and told her, "You're safe. Keep pushing." Finally, the room filled with a sound that snapped her soul back into her body, a sharp, angry cry. "A baby boy!" someone announced. Danielle's breath caught. Her heart broke and healed at the same time. They placed him on her chest, tiny, warm, and real. She stared at his face as if she was afraid he'd disappear. "My baby," she whispered, voice trembling. "Kingston." Kingston Pierce blinked up at her, fists curled, and Danielle began to sob, not the quiet tears she'd been forcing down for months, but the deep kind that came from grief finally meeting hope. "Thank you, God," she breathed. "Thank you." While Danielle held her newborn, the hospital's emergency team worked in another room down the hall. The young man from the intersection, Jalen Brooks, the stranger who'd tried to do the right thing, was still fighting for his life. A nurse named Brianna Tate stepped into Danielle's room with urgency in her eyes. Brianna was Danielle's closest friend at Mercy Oaks, the kind of woman who stood firm in faith and didn't sugarcoat truth. She had been working another wing when she heard Danielle's name called over the radio. "Danielle!" Brianna rushed to her bedside, relief flooding her face when she saw the baby. "Oh my goodness, look at him." Danielle managed a weak smile. "He's here," she whispered. Brianna squeezed her hand. "You did that, Mama. God carried you." Danielle swallowed. "The man. The one I—" Brianna nodded, her expression turning serious. "They're working on him. He made it to the ER with a pulse. They're trying to stabilize him now." Danielle closed her eyes, holding Kingston closer. "Please let him live." Not long after, there was a knock at the door. A man stepped inside with 2 hospital staff behind him. He moved with the quiet authority of someone used to being respected. His hair was silver and neatly styled, his posture strong, and his eyes, though tired, were sharp with emotion. This was Mr. Elijah Holloway, the elderly man whose handbag had been stolen. Wealth showed in the way he carried himself, but it was his gratitude that filled the room more than anything. He looked at Danielle and stopped, visibly shaken. "You," Mr. Holloway said softly. "You're the nurse who saved him, and you had your baby right after." Danielle's throat tightened. "Yes, sir." Mr. Holloway stepped closer, gaze dropping to the newborn. His eyes watered. "Oh, honey, you were out there fighting for somebody else's life, while your own life was changing." Danielle didn't know what to say. She just held her son and tried to breathe. Mr. Holloway's voice grew quieter, almost reverent. "I don't know you," he said, "but I believe God put you in my path today." Danielle blinked up at him. Mr. Holloway reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a card. "When you're strong enough, I want you to call me. I need to see you again. I need to thank you properly." Danielle's eyes filled again. "Thank you, but I was just—" "No," Mr. Holloway interrupted gently. "You were brave, and brave people deserve to be remembered." Just then, Brianna's phone buzzed. She looked down, then back up, with a sudden breath of relief. "He's awake," Brianna said. "Jalen's awake." Danielle froze, then exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. Mr. Holloway pressed his hand over his heart. "Thank you, Jesus," he whispered. Danielle looked down at Kingston, then toward the door, feeling something she couldn't fully explain, like that chaotic afternoon hadn't been random at all, like it had been the beginning of a destiny none of them saw coming. The following morning, the world felt different, quieter, but heavier in a way Danielle couldn't fully name. Sunlight slipped through the hospital blinds as Danielle sat up carefully in bed, wincing at the soreness in her body. Baby Kingston slept beside her in the bassinet, lips slightly parted, tiny chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Danielle watched him the way a person watches a miracle, like blinking too long might make it disappear. A soft knock came at the door. Brianna Tate stepped in first, holding a warm cup of tea and a paper bag. "Don't fuss," she said immediately, her tone firm but loving. "I brought you soup and some crackers. You need to eat." Danielle managed a tired smile. You always show up like you're assigned to me. Brianna pulled up a chair. Maybe I am. Then her expression softened. How you holding up, Danny? For real? Danielle glanced at Kingston. I don't know, she admitted quietly. I'm grateful he's okay, but Terrence should be here. And I keep thinking about that man, Jalen. I keep seeing him on that ground. Brianna reached over and squeezed her hand. You did what God trained you to do. And you didn't just save him. Your baby was coming and you still didn't stop. That kind of courage, it's not normal. Another knock came, and before Danielle could answer, the door opened. Mr. Elijah Holloway stepped in again, dressed sharply, hair neat, eyes alert. Two things were immediately clear. He wasn't just visiting out of politeness, and he wasn't used to being told no. Good morning, sweetheart, he said warmly. How's my little hero doing today? Danielle straightened, caught off guard by the affection in his tone. Good morning, sir. I'm okay, just sore. Mr. Holloway walked over to the bassinet, peering down at Kingston with a tender smile. Look at him, he murmured. He's perfect. Danielle's throat tightened. Compliments felt strange these days. She'd gotten used to surviving, not being celebrated. Mr. Holloway turned back to Brianna. And you must be her friend. Brianna stood. Brianna Tate, I work with Danielle, and I'm grateful you came back. She needs kindness right now. Mr. Holloway nodded like he respected that answer. Then he looked at Danielle with a seriousness that quieted the room. I visited that young man this morning, he said. Jalen Brooks. Danielle's eyes widened. How is he? He's sore, bruised, shaken. Mr. Holloway's voice softened. But alive. And he asked about you. He told the doctor he remembers your voice. Danielle exhaled slowly. Thank God. Mr. Holloway reached into his purse and pulled out a folder. I also learned something else, he continued. Jalen is a college graduate, smart, respectful, but he's been searching for a job for months, bills piling up, life pressing down, and still, he ran after those thieves without hesitation. Brianna's eyebrows lifted. That says a lot about his character. It does, Mr. Holloway agreed. So I'm going to do something about it. Danielle blinked. Sir? Mr. Holloway spoke with calm certainty. I own Holloway Fresh Market, and my flagship store needs a manager, someone who isn't lazy, someone who won't steal, someone who understands honor. I offered him the job. Danielle stared. You already offered? I did, Mr. Holloway said simply, and he accepted. A small, relieved laugh escaped Danielle before she could stop it. For the first time in a long time, she felt like something good had happened without a price attached. Mr. Holloway placed the folder on Danielle's bedside table, then sat down carefully. Now, he said, his gaze steady, we need to talk about you. Danielle's stomach tightened. Me? Mr. Holloway nodded. You're a widow. You just had a baby, and I can see in your face you've been carrying pain like it's your job. He paused, voice gentler. My house is too big, too quiet. My children are grown, and they barely come around. I have staff, but that's not family. Danielle's eyes flickered to Brianna, unsure. Mr. Holloway leaned in. I want you to stay with me for a while. You and Kingston. Not as charity. He lifted a hand, cutting off Danielle's protest before it could form. As community, as family, a woman shouldn't have to heal alone. Danielle swallowed hard. Pride fought inside her. So did fear. But something deeper, something tired and honest, wanted to accept. Brianna spoke softly, but with conviction. Danielle, sometimes God answers prayers through people. Don't reject help just because you're used to being strong. Danielle looked down at Kingston's tiny face, then back up at Mr. Holloway's. "Just until I get my footing," Danielle whispered. Mr. Holloway smiled, eyes shining. "That's all I'm asking." And just like that, in the space of one morning, Danielle realized her life wasn't closing in. It was opening up in a way she never expected. A week after moving into Mr. Holloway's home, Danielle stopped waking up with fear sitting on her chest. Not every day was easy. Kingston still cried at odd hours, her body was still healing, and grief still came in waves, but the house no longer felt like a strange place. It felt safe. Mr. Holloway's staff moved with quiet respect, and over time Danielle learned the rhythms. Breakfast at 8, soft gospel music in the kitchen, Mr. Holloway checking on the baby, like he'd been waiting years to have someone to care for again. Danielle tried to keep her head down and focus on her child, but life didn't let her stay invisible for long. One afternoon, while she rocked Kingston in the living room, the doorbell chimed. A moment later, Mr. Holloway's housekeeper peeked in and announced, "Mr. Brooks is here to see you, ma'am." Danielle's heart stuttered. Jalen Brooks stepped in slowly, still moving like his body hadn't forgiven the accident. His left arm was in a sling, and faint bruising lingered near his cheekbone. But his eyes were clear, steady in a way that made people feel seen. "I hope it's okay that I came," he said, voice respectful. "I didn't know who else to thank." Danielle stood carefully, shifting Kingston to her shoulder. "Of course it's okay. How are you feeling?" "Like I got jumped by a truck," Jalen replied with a small, honest smile. Then his gaze lowered to the baby. "And that's Kingston?" Danielle nodded. "Yes, Kingston Pierce." Jalen's expression softened. "He's beautiful." Danielle didn't know why those words hit her the way they did, but they did. Maybe because they were simple, not pity, not forced, just real. Mr. Holloway entered the room behind him, beaming. "He's doing well at the store already," he announced proudly. As soon as he could stand straight, he wanted to start learning the system. Jalen gave a slight shrug. "I couldn't keep sitting still. I needed purpose." Over the next few days, Jalen became a regular presence, never overstaying, never pushing, always offering help in small, meaningful ways. He'd bring Mr. Holloway updated store reports, check if Danielle needed anything from the pharmacy, and sometimes just stand in the doorway for a moment and ask, "You okay today?" Danielle told herself it was just gratitude, just kindness, but the truth was, Jalen's steadiness was healing something in her that grief had cracked. One evening, while Danielle folded baby clothes in the sitting room, Jalen stopped by to drop off paperwork for Mr. Holloway. Mr. Holloway stepped out to take a phone call, leaving Danielle and Jalen alone in the quiet. Jalen hesitated, like he'd been holding words back for days. "Danielle," he said, "can I tell you something without you thinking I'm trying to rush you?" Danielle paused, folding a tiny onesie. "Okay." He exhaled. "I've been around a lot of people in my life, and I don't say this lightly." His eyes met hers. "You saved my life, and the more I've been around you, the more I realize I admire you, not just as a nurse, as a woman, as a mother, as somebody who keeps standing." Danielle's hand stilled. Jalen continued softly. "I'm not asking you for anything. I just needed you to know. I'm feeling more than gratitude." The room felt suddenly too quiet. Danielle's chest tightened, not in fear, but in something like longing. She swallowed. "Jalen, I appreciate you, and I respect you, but my life is—" She glanced at Kingston. "It's complicated. Terrence hasn't been gone that long. I'm still learning how to breathe again." "I understand," Jalen said quickly. "I'm not trying to replace him." Danielle nodded, eyes glossy. If you're serious, then you'll have to be patient. Kingston is my priority, and I need time." Jalen's voice was calm, sure. "Then I'll wait. however long you need." Before Danielle could respond, the front door opened again. A man's voice carried through the hallway, smooth, confident. "Dad, I'm home." Mr. Holloway's expression changed as he hurried toward the entrance. "Lord have mercy," he muttered under his breath, like he already knew trouble had walked in with that voice. Danielle stepped into the hallway with Kingston in her arms. A tall black man in a fitted coat stood there with a travel bag at his feet, fresh from the road, eyes sharp with curiosity. This was Damon Holloway, Mr. Holloway's son, newly back in Charlotte after finishing graduate school, carrying himself like the world naturally made room for him. His gaze moved past his father and landed on Danielle. He stopped. For a second, the house seemed to hold its breath. "And who?" Damon asked slowly, a smile tugging at his mouth. "Is this?" Danielle felt the shift immediately, like peace had been sitting in the room, and now something restless had stepped inside. Mr. Holloway answered, voice firm. "That is Danielle Pierce. She's staying with me." Damon's smile widened, eyes lingering a moment too long. "Well," he said smoothly, "I can already tell. You've been keeping good company, Dad." Behind Danielle, Jalen's posture tightened, and Danielle didn't know it yet, but that moment, Damon Holloway's first look, was the beginning of a problem she didn't ask for. The following morning, Danielle tried to pretend the tension from Damon's arrival was just in her imagination. She focused on Kingston's feeding schedule, on keeping the nursery tidy, on the simple calm she'd been building since moving in, but when she stepped into the kitchen, she felt it again, that invisible pressure, like someone was watching her life too closely. Mr. Holloway sat at the breakfast table with his reading glasses on, scanning paperwork. Damon lounged nearby with coffee, relaxed like the house belonged to him in a way it never fully belonged to anyone else. When Danielle walked in, his eyes lifted immediately. "Good morning, Danielle," he said, smooth as honey. Danielle nodded politely. "Good morning." Damon stood, not rushed, but intentional. "I didn't get a proper chance to welcome you yesterday. My name is Damon Holloway." He smiled as if his name should impress her. "I'm grateful you're here taking care of my father." "I'm not," Danielle began, then corrected herself gently. "Mr. Holloway has been taking care of me too." Damon's eyes flicked to Kingston. "And that's your son?" "Yes," Danielle said, shifting Kingston on her hip. "Kingston." Damon's expression softened for a fraction of a second before his gaze sharpened again. "Terence was your husband, right? The one who passed?" The question was too direct, too early, too personal. Danielle kept her face calm. "Yes." "I'm sorry," Damon said, and the words sounded practiced. "A woman like you shouldn't have to go through that alone." Danielle forced a small smile. "Thank you." Mr. Holloway looked up from his paperwork. "Damon," he warned quietly, "give her space." Damon lifted both hands, feigning innocence. "I'm just being kind, Dad." But Danielle felt something underneath his kindness, something that wanted control, not connection. Later that afternoon, Danielle sat in the living room while Kingston slept. She heard footsteps in the hallway and looked up to see Damon standing at the doorway, like he'd been invited by the silence. "I was thinking," he said, stepping in, "since you're staying here, you should feel comfortable. If you need anything, money, a car, help with the baby, you can come to me." Danielle's brows drew together. "That's generous, but I'm okay." Damon tilted his head. "You don't have to be okay. Strong women get tired too." Danielle kept her tone respectful. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm not looking for anyone to rescue me." Damon smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Everybody needs somebody, Danielle." Before she could answer, the doorbell rang. A moment later, Jalen walked in, carrying a small bag from the pharmacy. He paused when he saw Damon standing so close. "Hey," Jalen said carefully, nodding at Danielle first. "Mr. Holloway asked me to drop these off." Damon's gaze moved over Jalen from head to toe like he was assessing a threat. "So you're Jalen," he said, voice calm but sharp around the edges. Jalen straightened. "Yes, sir." Damon chuckled softly. "Sir?" He took a step forward. "Look at you, working your way up. Manager now, right? That's cute." Danielle's stomach tightened. Jalen kept his voice steady. "Mr. Holloway gave me an opportunity. I'm grateful." Damon leaned in slightly, lowering his voice like the conversation was private, even though it wasn't. "Let me give you some advice. Don't get too comfortable. Opportunities can disappear as fast as they come." Jalen didn't flinch, but Danielle saw his jaw tighten. "I'm not here for comfort," Jalen replied. "I'm here to work." Damon's smile turned thin. "Good, because some people start thinking they belong in places they don't." Danielle stepped forward, voice firm. "That's enough." Damon's eyes shifted to her, surprised he'd challenged him. "I'm just talking," he said lightly. "You're not just talking," Danielle said, still controlled. "You're being disrespectful." The room went quiet. Damon stared at her for a beat, then smiled again like he'd decided something. "You're protective," he said softly. "I like that." Danielle's expression stayed unreadable. "I'm not protective. I'm clear." Later that evening, Mr. Holloway pulled Danielle aside near the staircase. His voice dropped into something serious. "Damon has a problem with not getting what he wants," he said. "I love my son, but I won't lie for him. If he starts bothering you, you tell me immediately." Danielle nodded, unsettled. "He's persistent." Mr. Holloway's face tightened. "Persistent is one thing, possessive is another." Upstairs, Damon stood in his bedroom, phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and cold. "I need a favor," he said to someone on the other end. "A nurse at Mercy Oaks. Her name is Sabrina Crow." He paused, listening, eyes narrowing. "Yes," Damon continued. "I want Danielle Pierce to lose the one thing that makes her feel independent." Damon's mouth curved slightly, not with joy, but with intention. "Once she has nothing," he said quietly, "she'll have to lean on somebody." And in that moment, jealousy stopped being emotion. It became a plan. 2 weeks later, Danielle stepped back into Mercy Oaks Medical Center with her shoulders squared and her heart beating hard. Her maternity leave wasn't over, but she'd agreed to come in for a short refresher shift and paperwork meeting. She wanted to stay connected, stay sharp, and most of all, remind herself she still had a purpose beyond grief. Brianna had offered to go with her, but Danielle insisted she'd be fine. "I just need to sign what I need to sign," Danielle told her that morning, adjusting Kingston's blanket in the car seat. "I'll be back before lunch." Mr. Holloway had watched from the front porch, worry in his eyes. "Don't let them stress you," he said. "You're still healing." Danielle smiled politely. "I'll be careful." But the moment she entered the hospital, she felt the air shift. Some people smiled and congratulated her on the baby. Others stared too long, whispering as they walked past. Danielle brushed it off at first. Hospitals were full of gossip. She'd survived it before. Then she saw Sabrina Crow. Sabrina was a nurse on a different unit, someone Danielle knew mostly by face and quick hallway hellos. She moved with sharp energy and a fake sweetness that never fully sat right. That day, Sabrina's smile seemed almost excited when she spotted Danielle. "Danielle Pierce," Sabrina said, walking up like they were close friends. "Look at you, back already?" "I'm just here for paperwork," Danielle replied, keeping it short. Sabrina's eyes dropped to the diaper bag on Danielle's shoulder. "Must be nice," she said quietly. "Some of us don't have rich people opening their mansions for us." Danielle blinked. Excuse me? Sabrina waved a hand like she hadn't said anything. Oh, nothing. I'm just saying. You've had a lot of blessings lately. Danielle didn't answer. Something in Sabrina's tone felt like a warning wrapped in a compliment. Danielle finished her meeting and headed toward the nurse's station to drop off a signed form. A unit clerk asked her to quickly confirm a patient medication entry, since her name appeared in the system. Danielle frowned. She hadn't been assigned any patients today. Let me see, Danielle said, leaning over the screen. Her stomach dropped. Her name was logged on a medication chart for a patient she'd never touched. That's not me, Danielle said immediately, voice tightening. I wasn't even on the floor. The clerk shrugged. It's in the system. Maybe you signed in earlier? Danielle's heartbeat thumped loud in her ears. No, someone made a mistake. Before the clerk could respond, Sabrina appeared again, walking by too casually, eyes flicking to the screen like she already knew what was there. Danielle turned sharply. Sabrina, do you know anything about this? Sabrina lifted her brows. About what? Danielle's voice lowered. My name being on a chart. Sabrina's smile was smooth. Why would I know about that? Danielle stared at her, but Sabrina just walked away, humming under her breath like the conversation didn't matter. That evening, Danielle returned home unsettled. Kingston cried more than usual, and Danielle's hands shook as she warmed his bottle. She tried to pray, tried to calm her mind, but dread sat in her gut like a stone. The next day, the call came. Danielle Pierce, a stern voice asked on the phone. This is the hospital compliance office. We need you to come in immediately regarding a serious medication complaint. Danielle's mouth went dry. A complaint? About what? We'll discuss it in person, the voice replied. Do not contact the patient. Danielle hung up with trembling fingers. When she arrived, she was led into a small office where two administrators sat with folders open. A man in a suit introduced himself as a hospital legal representative. Danielle barely heard his name. Her mind was screaming, What is happening? A middle-aged patient was brought in next. The woman's arms were folded, her expression rehearsed. That's her, the patient said, pointing directly at Danielle. She gave me the wrong medication. I told her I felt dizzy and she ignored me. Danielle's breath caught. That's not true. I've never even met you. The patient didn't blink. Yes, you did. You were rushing. You didn't care. Danielle looked to the administrators, desperate. Check the cameras. Check my assignments. I wasn't working that unit. One of them slid paperwork across the desk. The chart shows your credentials, your signature, your access code. Danielle's head spun. That's impossible. But the room wasn't built for believing her. It was built for closing cases. By the end of the meeting, Danielle left Mercy Oaks feeling like the ground had disappeared under her feet. In the lobby, she saw people watching her, whispering. Outside, she sat in her car and finally let the tears fall. God, she whispered, shaking. I don't understand. I was trying to rebuild. Back at Mr. Holloway's house, Danielle tried to act normal, but the moment Brianna walked in and saw her face, she knew. What happened? Brianna asked, alarmed. Danielle's voice cracked. They're saying I harmed a patient. Brianna's eyes widened. No, Danielle, no. Danielle held Kingston close, trembling. Someone is trying to destroy me. And miles away, Damon Holloway sat comfortably with his phone in hand, listening to Sabrina's update. Good, Damon said softly, voice cold with satisfaction. Now we push it the rest of the way. The following week felt like Danielle was drowning on dry land. Every morning she woke up hoping the nightmare had been a misunderstanding, hoping someone would call and say, "We found the real mistake. You're cleared." But instead, The calls kept coming, each one heavier than the last. First, Mercy Oaks placed her on immediate suspension. Then the state board notified her that her nursing license was under review. By Friday, it was official. Danielle's license was temporarily revoked pending investigation. Danielle sat on the edge of Mr. Holloway's guest bed, phone in her hand, staring at the email until the words blurred. Her chest tightened so hard she could barely breathe. Nursing wasn't just her job, it was her identity. It was how she provided, how she served, how she proved to herself that grief hadn't broken her. Now it was being ripped away in public. In the living room downstairs, Mr. Holloway paced like a lioness, furious. "This is evil," he snapped. "That hospital should be ashamed of itself." Danielle's voice was quiet, defeated. "They believe the chart. They believe the patient." Brianna stood near the couch, eyes flashing. "Because they don't want to admit their system can be corrupted. It's easier to blame you." Danielle held Kingston to her chest, trying to keep her tears from falling onto his little blanket. "What am I supposed to do now? I can't work. I can't—" Her voice cracked. "I can't even defend myself without money." Mr. Holloway stopped pacing and faced her. "You won't be defending yourself alone," he said firmly. "I already made a call." 2 days later, Mr. Holloway's attorney arrived at the house. Attorney Roland Mercer was a black man in his 40s with a sharp haircut, sharp eyes, and the kind of calm that made chaos feel smaller. He introduced himself with a simple handshake. "Mr. Holloway tells me you were framed," he said to Danielle. "If that's true, we're going to prove it." Danielle swallowed, voice trembling. "I don't even know where to start." "We start with the truth," Mercer replied, "and we don't stop until it's loud." That night, Danielle finally stepped onto the back patio to breathe. The sky was dark, air cool against her cheeks. She thought about Terence again, how he would have wrapped his arms around her and told her to fight. Her eyes burned. "God," she whispered, "I'm trying not to break." Behind her, the sliding door opened. Jalen stepped out. He looked different, tired, but steady. He carried himself like a man who'd made a decision and wouldn't be moved by fear. "Danielle," he said softly, "I heard what happened." Danielle's shoulders sagged. "I'm sorry," she blurted, the guilt rushing out of her. "This is because of me. You got pulled into this whole mess." Jalen frowned. "What are you talking about?" Danielle's voice shook. "Mr. Holloway fired you." Jalen's eyes narrowed. "No, he didn't." Danielle froze. "He didn't?" Jalen exhaled, jaw tight. "Damon did. He went to the store, made some calls, claimed I was unqualified. He used his last name like a weapon." Danielle's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God." Jalen stepped closer, voice low but firm. "Don't you apologize for somebody else's evil. Damon chose this." Tears finally spilled down Danielle's face. "I don't know how to survive this." Jalen's tone softened. "You already survived worse. You survived loss. You survived childbirth in the middle of saving a stranger. You're not built to quit." Danielle looked up at him, searching his face for false comfort, but she didn't find any. Only truth. "I'm not leaving," Jalen said. "Not because I need something from you, because you deserve somebody who stays." Danielle pressed Kingston tighter to her chest, her body trembling with emotion. Inside the house, Mr. Holloway stared at his son's closed bedroom door with fury and heartbreak mixing in his eyes, because he knew, deep down, Damon wasn't finished, and neither was the storm. 2 days after Attorney Mercer took Danielle's case, the house felt like a war room. Mr. Holloway cleared the dining table and laid out every document he could find. Emails, hospital notices, time logs Danielle had printed, even handwritten notes Brianna remembered from that day. Danielle watched it all with a numbness that scared her. She had cried so much her eyes felt dry, like they'd run out of tears. Attorney Roland Mercer sat at the head of the table, calm and focused. "Framing someone takes planning," he said. "Planning leaves trails. Trails lead to people." Brianna leaned forward. "Sabrina Crowe has been acting strange for weeks. She's been popping up everywhere Danielle goes, and she kept asking me questions, like she wanted details." Mercer nodded once. "Good, that's a starting point." That afternoon, Mercer visited Mercy Oaks and requested official records through formal channels. He didn't beg, he didn't argue. He spoke in the language administrators respected: policy, liability, and consequences. By evening, he had something that made his eyes sharpen. He called Mr. Holloway's house immediately. "I found suspicious logins," Mercer said on speakerphone. "The medication entry was made using Danielle's access code, but the system shows it was entered from a terminal on the West Wing." Danielle's throat tightened. "But I wasn't even there." "I know," Mercer replied. "And here's the other problem. The entry was made at a time when the security camera shows Danielle was in a different building signing paperwork." Brianna's voice rose. "So it's possible to prove she wasn't the one at the terminal." "Possible," Mercer said, "but we need the footage." The next morning, Mercer requested hospital surveillance records. The hospital hesitated, claiming privacy restrictions. Mercer didn't blink. "Then we'll subpoena it," he said evenly. That word, subpoena, made doors open. Within hours, the footage was reviewed. Danielle sat on the couch while Mercer watched the video on his laptop. Brianna stood behind him, arms folded, eyes hard. Mr. Holloway paced again, prayer murmuring under his breath like a weapon. Mercer paused the video and turned the screen slightly. "There," he said. Danielle leaned forward, heart pounding. The grainy footage showed a nurse at a computer station. Quick movements, head lowered, hair pulled back. It wasn't clear enough to show the nurse's face in full detail, but the posture was familiar. Brianna's voice came out sharp. "That's Sabrina," Mercer rewound. "And look at the timestamp," he pointed. "This is the exact minute the medication was entered." Danielle's mouth fell open. "So she used my code. Or stole it," Mercer said. "Either way, she did it." But Mercer didn't stop there. Later that day, he obtained financial records connected to the patient complaint. Not full bank statements, just enough to show something abnormal. A sudden payment deposited into the patient's account 2 days before the accusation. Danielle stared at the printout, shaking. "They paid her." Mr. Holloway's eyes flashed with fury. "My own son," he breathed, like the words burned. That evening, Mercer made one last move. He requested a formal re-interview with the patient, this time with legal representation present. In the small conference room at the hospital, the patient sat stiffly, eyes darting. Mercer sat across from her, calm as stone. "I'm going to ask you again," he said. "Did Danielle Pierce give you the wrong medication?" The patient hesitated. "Yes." Mercer slid the payment record across the table. "Then explain this deposit." Silence. The patient's lips trembled. I don't know." Mercer leaned in, voice quiet but heavy. "Lying in a medical investigation is a crime. Taking money to accuse an innocent nurse is a crime. I can't protect you from what comes next. But the truth can." The patient's shoulders collapsed. Tears spilled out. "I was paid," she admitted, voice breaking. "A nurse named Sabrina. She said it would be easy. She said I'd get money and nothing would happen." Danielle's breath left her body like she'd been punched. Brianna closed her eyes, whispering, "Jesus." Mercer stood. "Thank you," he said, not unkindly. "Now we can fix what they tried to break." That night, Mr. Holloway walked upstairs and stopped in front of Damon's door. His hand shook as he raised it to knock. When the door opened, Damon looked surprised until he saw his father's face. "What did you do?" Mr. Holloway asked, his voice trembling with betrayal. Damon's expression tightened, and for the first time since he returned home, he didn't have a charming answer. The next morning, the truth moved faster than the lie ever did. Attorney Roland Mercer submitted the confession, the security footage timeline, and the payment trail to the hospital board and the state nursing board. Mercy Oaks had no choice but to respond. By midday, Danielle received a call that made her knees go weak. "Ms. Pierce," the board representative said, voice suddenly polite, "new evidence has been presented. Your temporary revocation is being reversed effective immediately." Danielle gripped the phone with trembling fingers. "So, my license is restored?" "Yes, and the hospital will be issuing a formal correction regarding the accusation." When she hung up, Danielle didn't scream or celebrate. She just sat down and covered her face, shaking as relief poured through her like warm water after a long winter. Brianna wrapped her arms around her. "I told you," she whispered, "truth doesn't stay buried." Downstairs, Mr. Holloway stood in the middle of his living room like a man holding both victory and heartbreak, because the next part wasn't sweet. Sabrina Crowe was called into a disciplinary hearing that same week. Under the weight of evidence, she tried to deny at first, until Mercer revealed the video again and the patient's confession. Sabrina's face went pale. Her voice cracked. I didn't mean for it to go this far." But it had. Her nursing license was revoked, and she was suspended permanently from Mercy Oaks. That news spread quickly, and with it came the part everyone had been whispering about. Who paid her? Mercer didn't let the hospital protect powerful names. He took the evidence to authorities, and Damon Holloway's world collapsed. When the police came, Danielle wasn't there to see Damon put in handcuffs. She didn't want that image in her spirit. But she heard the shouting from the hallway and the sound of Mr. Holloway crying out, not to stop the arrest, but from the pain of watching his own son become exactly what he feared. Damon was charged with conspiracy, fraud, and witness tampering. The court moved quickly because the paper trail was clean and the confession was clear. When sentencing came, Damon stood in a suit that couldn't hide the arrogance he used to wear like armor, but even he couldn't pretend anymore. The judge's voice was firm. 5 years. Mr. Holloway sobbed softly in the back of the courtroom, hands clasped like he was praying and bleeding at the same time. Afterward, he approached Danielle and Jalen outside the courthouse. His eyes were swollen, his pride stripped bare. "Danielle, Jalen," he said, voice shaking, "I know my son tried to destroy you. I know he shamed all of us." He swallowed hard. "But I'm begging you as a father, please don't let bitterness live in this family forever." Danielle's throat tightened. She looked at Mr. Holloway, the man who had sheltered her, fed her, loved her baby like his own, and saw that his grief was real. Jalen stepped forward first, his voice steady but heavy. "Sir, what Damon did was evil," he said, "but you didn't do it, and you don't deserve to be punished for his choices." Danielle's eyes filled. "Forgiving him doesn't mean excusing it," she whispered, "but I don't want my life shaped by hate." Mr. Holloway broke down, shoulders shaking, and Danielle reached out, pulling him into a hug that surprised even herself. That decision mattered, because with demonstrated remorse, cooperation, and Mr. Holloway's advocacy, the sentence was later reduced, 5 years down to 2. A week later, the house felt lighter again. Danielle sat in the backyard with Kingston on her lap, the late afternoon breeze brushing her cheeks. Jalen walked out slowly, hands behind his back. "Danielle," he said, "can I talk to you?" She looked up. "Sure." Jalen took a breath, then knelt in front of her. You told me to wait, he said softly. And I did, not because I had to, but because you were worth it. Danielle's lips parted, heart pounding. I can't promise you a perfect life, Jalen continued, but I can promise you I'll be present. I'll protect your peace. I'll honor your past. And I'll love Kingston like he's my own. He pulled out a small ring, simple, beautiful. Danielle Pierce, he whispered, will you marry me? Danielle stared at him through tears, and this time her answer came like freedom. Yes, she breathed. Yes. 3 months after the proposal, Danielle stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back, not because she looked like someone else, but because her eyes carried peace now, the kind of peace she used to beg God for at 2 a.m. while rocking Kingston in the dark, the kind of peace grief once told her she'd never feel again. Downstairs, the house buzzed with life. Mr. Holloway had insisted the wedding be held in his backyard, under a bright white tent, with chairs lined in neat rows and soft music floating through the air. He wanted it family-centered, joyful, and full of grace, because he believed Danielle's new beginning deserved to be celebrated loudly. Brianna stood in Danielle's room, helping her straighten her dress. You okay? She asked, voice warm. Danielle exhaled slowly. I'm scared, she admitted. Not of him, not of love, just of life changing again. Brianna nodded like she understood completely. Then we pray, she said. They bowed their heads right there. Brianna's words were simple, steady, and faith-filled, asking God to bless the marriage, protect the home, and heal every scar that still ached beneath the surface. When they finished, Danielle looked down at Kingston, dressed in a tiny outfit that made her heart squeeze. He reached for her necklace with curious fingers, babbling softly. My miracle, Danielle whispered, kissing his forehead. Outside, Jalen waited at the front, nervous in a way Danielle had never seen him. His suit fit him well, but it was his eyes that told the story, steady, sincere, full of intention. When Danielle finally walked down the aisle, the entire crowd stood. Some smiled, some wiped tears. Mr. Holloway pressed a hand to his chest like he was watching a prayer answered in real time. The ceremony was short, but deep. Pastor Calvin Rhodes spoke about love that protects, love that perseveres, and love that doesn't demand perfection, only commitment. When Danielle and Jalen exchanged vows, Danielle's voice trembled, but she didn't break. I thought my story ended, she said softly. But God proved it was only turning the page. Jalen's eyes shone as he answered, I'm not here to replace what you lost. I'm here to build what you still deserve. When they kissed, the crowd erupted in applause, and Danielle felt something settle in her spirit. She was not surviving anymore. She was living. A few weeks later, Danielle and Jalen moved into a new home. Not huge, not flashy, but warm. The kind of place that smelled like fresh laundry and dinner on the stove. Danielle returned to nursing with her name restored and her confidence rebuilt. Jalen thrived in his new role at a growing grocery company, earning respect the honest way, through consistency and character. Time moved forward like a gentle river. Danielle and Jalen welcomed 2 more children over the years, filling the house with laughter, sibling arguments, bedtime prayers, and the kind of love Danielle once thought she'd never see again. Then, one Sunday afternoon, a letter arrived. It was from Damon. Danielle's hand stiffened when she saw his handwriting, but she opened it anyway. The message was not long. It didn't beg. It didn't make excuses. It simply owned the truth. Jealousy, entitlement, and control had turned him into someone he didn't recognize. He apologized to Danielle, to Jalen, and to his father. He wrote that prison stripped him down, and faith built him back up. He had joined ministry programs, studying scripture, and serving others behind bars. Months later, when Damon was released, he asked to meet. They met at Mr. Holloway's house, where it all began. Damon walked in slower than before, eyes lower, posture humbled. Mr. Holloway's hands trembled as he touched his face, like he was making sure he was real. Damon turned to Danielle and Jalen, voice rough. "I was wrong," he said, "and I'm sorry." Danielle didn't forget what he did, but she saw the sincerity. She nodded once. "I accept your apology," she said quietly. "But never forget what control can turn love into." Damon swallowed hard. "I won't. I'm spending the rest of my life warning men not to become me." In time, Damon began serving through prison outreach and church ministry, choosing purpose over pride, and Mr. Holloway, once surrounded by wealth but lonely in his own house, now sat at a table full of family, not because life was perfect, but because love, faith, and perseverance had written a destiny bigger than the pain that started it all.